Yeah, so I'm in Crestone, Colorado, and Crestone is a sanctuary for the world's spiritual traditions. So there are Hindu temples, Zen temples, Catholic nuns on retreat, various Sufi, Subud, amazing array of different spiritual traditions. And all of these traditions were given land to build their sanctuaries on. And it's at the foot of the Sangre de Cristo, the blood of Christ mountains. And so it's a very good place for deep spiritual work. Many Tibetan teachers and Eastern teachers come, they say the austerity of the mountains is an excellent place to do a retreat and to encounter your own inner stuff. It was 3 a.m. I was 13. My suitcase was scuffed from being hauled through woods and across rocks and bracken. I had made my escape partly across some wild Cheshire countryside to avoid being seen by even a stray car, out for its own mysterious reasons on those remote roads in the dead of night. I could never have explained myself. As inventive as I was, a young boy dragging a suitcase in a very lonely place at that time of the night would have had a hard time explaining himself, when in reality he had committed a robbery and was on the run. This is my experience. But now I dropped down onto the country road. I had no option. I had an early train to catch from the nearest town of Macclesfield to the big city of Manchester. From there, I would take a plane out of the country. It was a big plan, one that called for unflinching resolve. It would be sheer ignominy to be caught. It had only been hours since I had stolen the money. Could somebody have woken up at the seminary and found that my bed was empty or the safe had been robbed? Or would I simply arouse suspicion as a young person out in the middle of nowhere? Yet I knew in my heart, I knew that God was not entirely displeased with me. Somewhere in the cosmos, I had a co-conspirator who was smiling down on this more than brash escapade and having fun with shuffling the deck of possible life trajectories to guarantee mine would be anything but a linear destiny path. It was of little concern to such a high cosmic being that I would suffer bitter consequences for my action, since bitterness can be a stern but effective teacher. I mean, insane, this 13-year-old boy, not only robbing the seminary where he had lived for 2 years with a priestly vocation, but actually taking a plane to Ireland. And the clincher in the story is My family had left Ireland. My family was living in London. What was going on? And I can tell you that it wasn't all by any means in the conscious mind. It was the subconscious. It was the whole being. And what I was doing was disrupting the linear, was disrupting in a radical, maybe a stupid and crazy way, but I was disrupting the linear projected reality of church, of home. And there was something about the call to go back to Ireland, the mythic resonance of somehow I would be free from the linear binds there. Of course, it only took a few days for me to be caught, but I did actually arrive in Bray, the seaside town where I was born. And each one of us on this call has done that same thing, probably a lot more skillfully than me, but each one of us, I'm sure, has done that linear disruption, has broken free or tried to break free from the dominant worldview, from the thing we were told you're going to be, you're supposed to be, this is the way it's supposed to happen. And we said, something else is going to come through me. And sometimes that is very messy. Sometimes it causes pain and hurt to others. But we have to do it. We have to do it from a primal instinct within us. And that instinct is also an evolutionary instinct. And then think of the world as it is today and how many people are breaking out of the chrysalis of different forms and saying, we're here, sono presente, I am here, I am an actualizing, self-realizing soul, and I am not going to fit into the mold that was given to me. How many on every continent? And as a whole system perspective, we see that the system is becoming unstable because the dominant paradigm is being challenged by the experience and spiritual work of individuals and collectives everywhere. And let us just pause for a moment and contemplate the price that is being paid by individuals in their emotional life, in their psychic life, in their economic life, in their family life, that they are paying in order to break through. And what are they breaking through? What is this dominant paradigm? In many ways, I call it the world of domination by number, by quantities, by how much did you get, what was the cost, what was the value in economic terms. In so many ways we see how profit creative funding, whatever it is, takes control, and we are just numbers in a huge quantifiable reality towards a sustainable world and social justice. And what I said had some people's ears popping. I said, I don't think sustainable is the right term. I mean, it's a very important concept. But what are we sustaining? What are we sustaining? We have to think in terms that are wildly more alluring than simply sustaining. Imagine somebody comes up to you and says, "How are you doing?" "Oh, I'm sustaining well." "How's your marriage?" "Oh, we're sustaining. We're very sustainable." It's limited. It's about cost. It's about numbers. How about towards the birth of an entirely new humanity that is emotionally and compassionately capacitated to recreate the whole thing? And when we think about social justice, again, it's one of those terms that I think we can dust off and say, how about joyful justice? How about healing justice? Even restorative justice, which I love. Restoring what? Sustaining and restoring what? Breaking open. And we see there are so many communities on the web, in the world, who are really rethinking, reliving, re-examining what the entire evolutionary story offers to us. If you think of the shift from dominant religion to emerging spirituality, you can see that people want to get to the essence. They're breaking through identities and saying formal religions and their counterclaims about truth are not accurate enough. We need something more essential. And that quest for the essential is everywhere. What happens often when you disrupt the linear and step into uncertainty? You don't know where it's going to turn out. You can quickly meet the polarity. The polarity wants to pull you back. Oh, which side are you on? Whose side are you on? You've got to be pro-life or pro-choice. You've got to be right-wing or left-wing. And yet, you know in your heart, we know in our hearts, that those dead certainties are the things to avoid. And that we're called to synthesize. In my own case, I broke out of the church in this dramatic way, and within a couple of years, I was an activist in London. I got awards for my activism in organizing other young people to look at poverty and the condition of senior citizens in London. Because the heart is never a partisan. The deep heart can never be a partisan of the part. It is an organ of perception of the whole. And we're moving in these shifting worldviews from hierarchy to holarchy. Hierarchy is linearity. Who's on top? Who's on the bottom? Who's got it all? Who's got none? Who's got more? Who's got less? Who's better than? Who's worse than? And holarchy is the science of wholeness that says everything is whole and a part of a greater whole. We are interfused, interconnected wholeness. And imagine a humanity emerging that truly witnesses and believes and understands that there is no lesser being on the face of the earth. There is no them. There's me and you and us, but them, they are history. There is no otherizing. There is no lesserness. That each of us is whole. As the great Renaissance figure Giordano Bruno said, the center of the universe is everywhere. There is no boundary. There is nothing in the universe that says, oh, that place there, that is the absolute center of the universe. Each one of us is in the center, and that causes us to have profound spiritual reverence for each other and not look for who's the higher being and who's the lower. I have seen people on either side of conflicts through dialogue, through that deep listening, open to each other in a way that is totally miraculous. Gottfried Lieb and Mary Rothschild, former Hitler Youth, daughter of Holocaust survivors. And in the dialogue, they keep asking each other penetrating questions until finally Gottfried says, I am called the Nazi. My children are the children of the Nazi. My grandchildren are the grandchildren of the Nazi. But along comes this woman who represents and is a Jew, and she throws a bridge across the abyss and asks me to meet her on the bridge. I mean, how much deeper can we get? It's there in the human story that we really can evolve beyond.